Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Mr. Rogues. In this video we spotlight forgotten supervillain Anthony Lupus. Throughout the decades, countless vile knaves have reared ugly mugs to pester our beloved superheroes. Some of these dastardly rogues have gotten to stand among the most infamous fictional villains in pop culture history, while others have completely vanished into obscurity. In this episode of Forgotten Supervillains, we spotlight Anthony Lupus. Tony Lupus made his first appearance in Batman 255, published in 1974. The story, titled Moon of the Wolf, was written by Wein and penciled by Neal Adams. In it, we meet Anthony Lupus, a famous Olympian decathlon athlete in Gotham City. The man worked hard his entire life, pushing his body to its limits, so that one day he could reach the levels of success he now enjoys. Now his life is a charmed one, to say the least. However, soon something begins to disturb Anthony's bliss. Violent headaches. They always seem to occur on nights of a full moon. Lupus seeks help from the finest doctors Gotham has to offer, but none has any help to give. So he grows desperate, trying lesser doctors, healers, and various other shady quacks. Eventually, in the bowels of Gotham, he finds Professor Milo. Unbeknownst to him, a criminal madman with a history with Batman and other superheroes. Surprisingly, Milo offers a cure, and it helps, eliminating the headaches. However, it came with terrible side effects. Terrible indeed, as by each full moon, Lupus' human form transforms into that of a wolfman, a werewolf. He then stalks the night, more animal than man, looking for prey. Later, when human again, Lupus seeks out Milo, confronting him about this cure of his. Turns out Milo suspected Anthony suffered from a repressed form of lycanthropy, which turned out to be true, and thus fed him a serum derived from Alaskan timber wolves. Milo wanted him to fully transform, and his serum did the trick. The mad professor now plays a game of blackmail, promising he'll give Lupus the true cure if he uses his newfound werepowers to kill the Batman, Milo's hated nemesis. Lupus refuses at first, not wanting to take a life, but eventually he succumbs and agrees to Milo's twisted deal. In the end, however, Batman managed to defeat Lupus in his wolf form, naturally, and it seemed as if the hairy character died. Although sometime later, they began to spread rumors of a mysterious hunter in Alaska who hunted nothing but timber wolves. But upon nights of a full moon, these packs of wolves were joined by a new member, one whose body shape almost resembled that of a man. This somewhat ambiguous ending could have been the end of Anthony Lupus, and perhaps it should have. But 7 years later in 1981, the furry fiend returned. In this story, published in Detective Comics 505, written by Jerry Conway and penciled by Don Newton, we learn that Lupus had a younger sister. Her name is Angela, and she suffers from leukemia, desperately needing a bone marrow transplant. The only one who can give it to her is Anthony. Of course, Batman believes him to be dead, and thus that nothing can be done. However, Commissioner Gordon knows better, as he's discovered that Lupus is in fact alive, now living in Alaska as a recluse wolf hunter. So Batman sets off for Alaska, where he does indeed encounter Lupus. Unlucky for the old manhunter though, it happens to be on a full moon, and thus the Lupus he finds is a more feral variant. The two fight, but in the end Batman manages to subdue the werewolf by covering him in a net made of silver. He then waits till morning when a human Lupus grows back, and he then explains his business. This story ended in an ambiguous way too, merely implying that Batman and Lupus returned to Gotham, where Angela was cured, and Anthony perhaps too. Apparently though, Anthony wasn't cured, as in more recent years he showed up again in his werewolf form, although only for a few very small cameos. As for other media, Anthony appeared on Batman the Animated Series, in the episode Moon of the Wolf, an adaptation of the comic of the same name. Some things were changed for this version though. For example, his name is Anthony Romulus here. I guess calling a werewolf Lupus was just too silly. And he goes to Milo not for severe headaches, but to get steroids. Milo also doesn't want him to kill Batman, but to just do his dirty work in general. The character was voiced by Harry Hamlin in the episode. This version of Anthony also showed up in the Batman Taz spin-off comics, namely in issue 21 of the Batman Adventures, where he appeared alongside two other feral rogues from the show, Man-Bat and Tigress. So this is obviously a character who's been a long time coming on this channel. I figured it would be the perfect time to do him now, during Spooktober. I have actually talked about Lupus before, briefly, in my Wein video, although there I just mentioned his first story. I guess you can say that Anthony Lupus does have a bit of a following, perhaps more so than most of these forgotten rogues. He did after all appear on Batman the Animated Series, and his first story is a classic, considering the fact it was penciled by Neal Adams. Anything penciled by Neal Adams back in his 70s is classic, and seems to get reprinted numerous times. So I suppose it's almost a bit of a stretch to call Lupus forgotten. Having appeared as few times as he has though, the character is still fairly obscure. Also, the animated series is getting pretty old now, and Lupus hasn't appeared in any other cartoons since then or other media. The creators of Taz drew a lot from 70s Batman, so it's not so strange they adapted Moon of the Wolf. Anyway, I love werewolves, and I obviously love Batman, so how can I not love a werewolf Batman villain? The very concept alone is awesome enough. But then on top of that, Anthony Lupus happens to be a really great character too. He's a very tragic rogue, suffering from this illness, and then being blackmailed into doing an evil deed. The man himself isn't evil, and he wouldn't even have been a villain at all if it weren't for his unfortunate circumstances. Milo drags him into crime, and anything the man does as a werewolf can't even be blamed on him, as he's not in control whatsoever. This is a man who would have been a law-abiding citizen if all this crazy stuff hadn't happened to him. I can't help but feel sorry for Lupus. He also worked very hard to reach where he is in life, and he's quite an inspiring fella. Nobody handed him his fame and fortune on a silver platter. He got it himself. Of course, this is where the comics version and the Taz version kinda differs. On Taz, Anthony is less sympathetic, as he gets dragged into all of this simply because he wanted to cheat. So really, it's his own fault. Lupus is one villain Taz kinda failed with in my opinion. I vastly prefer the comics version. But really, only his first story was necessary. It ended perfectly, and we didn't need any more. Not that the 81 story is bad, it's just a bit pointless. There are a lot of villains who should have appeared more than what they did, but Lupus is actually stronger as a one-shot character. On a final note, I also want to say that I actually find his type of lycanthropy to be very interesting. Some people may find it silly that he has a repressed form of the condition, manifesting itself as headaches during full moons. But I find it to be pretty unique and fresh, as opposed to the classic getting bitten by a werewolf. It's almost scarier too, that some of us are just born with this condition, and there's nothing we can really do about it. And someday, it might just fully bloom out. So there you have it. That is the story of forgotten supervillain Anthony Lupus, the werewolf. I would actually say he's one of my favorite Batman villains, maybe even in my top 20. What do you think about him? Let me know in the comments. And as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.